means different things to each of us. It's the day-to-day light of the sun which greets us in the morning. It's a lamp to read by, the warm light at a dining table, the glow of a fireplace when visiting with friends and family. It's the brilliant stage lights which illuminate a performance. It's a prayerful or enlightened experience filled with a special feeling of peace and awareness. One of the most important effects of light, which is thought of the least, is the profound effect of light's energy on all human function, including creativity. "You can see 5,000 years back in the light of words," said Annie Sullivan to Helen Keller in William Gibson's play The Miracle Worker. Those same words light the passion within playwright Karen Setlowe. She attempts to weave words into a life force which illuminates human history and the people who shape our culture. Music, lyrics, audiovisual special effects, dance, costumes, and sets augment that quest. Simple or complex, it all plays a part in Karen's work as a socially engaged playwright, one whose work gets her involved in communities. Karen began her journey with theater as a child near the Atlantic Ocean beaches on Long Island, New York. Before she could walk, she learned dance moves from her mother, a former Pantages Theater Circuit vaudeville headliner, followed by mentoring in stage technique and writing by her father, a former New York actor who was skilled in all aspects of theater. She developed a love of music and singing from both. Her parents had met in 1929 in the Broadway hit musical Good News. Even though they chose other professions when they married and began a family, they encouraged Karen's interest in all aspects of theater. Her first theater experiments were in her backyard arbor, covered in vines and surrounded by grass and trees, where she created skits with her dolls and neighborhood friends dressed in old clothes found in family closets.
Oh, wow. I haven't thought about that in a long time. It's kind of embarrassing to think about it now. Oh, it was like another person's life. I'm probably still doing the same old thing. I mean, I still wander around listening to sounds of the earth and the sights and listening to people and learning from people every day and soaking up everything I hear and see and connecting to the earth, to inspire me. The only major difference is that I don't think I intellectualized when I was a child that I kind of feel like a butterfly, in the sense where a butterfly goes through all those changes and stages, and then it gets very few moments. Butterfly's lifespan is really short after having gone through all those changes, and then they burst into flight, and that's very exciting. The few moments over the decades where I have felt that I have burst into flight. In a way, what I miss about childhood is I think my process was a lot more spontaneous, and I think I overthink things a bit too much now as an adult. I'm groping through my past, my present, and actually sometimes try to search into my future and imagine instead of just letting it happen, which I think is part of the beauty of childhood. The ability to stay in the moment, that's the biggest challenge as an adult, to be in the moment. I wish I could be in the moment of every day.
From her beginnings in New York and expanding throughout the U.S. and overseas, Karen has built upon her education, training, early years as a performer, playwriting, and artist-in-residence experience to research, explore, experiment, and collaborate. Karen has drawn inspiration and strength from involvement in small cities, collaborating with other artists and arts organizations, educators and students, business and government. With the support of regional, state, national, and international awards, scholarships, grants, and fellowships, she's been free to explore globally diverse and historic themes: world leaders, learning processes, metaphysics, wellness, disability, empowerment of individual dreams and community dynamics. To foster her growth as an artist, she spent periods of time in a variety of American and overseas cities. Involvement in cities led to exploring the critical foundation of America's rich rural history. She's been involved with communities, theaters, schools, artist residencies, arts festivals, public art, fundraisers, and community-related feature stories for regional, national, and overseas media.
Theater involves all kinds of arts. It's the one art on the planet that actually involves every kind of art you can think of. The arts kind of manifest themselves as a drive, a kind of timeless drive within individuals who are struggling to express themselves, to become something. And quite often, they don't know what or who they want to become. And the arts seem to be a manifestation of that. And then in that process of people becoming who they're meant to be, history is created. Lives are impacted. People discover themselves. And we have a permanent record through the expression of all of the arts, not just playwriting, but all the other arts, of this timeless drive that people seem to go through. And it's a kind of recording that goes beyond pure data. It's one thing to sit down and read a history book, which quite frankly I always found quite boring. But when you have an artistic experience driven by people trying to discover who they are through their art, you get the history. You get the history of small towns and cities and bigger cities and states and countries and the planet. Over the decades, when I'd go in and get one of my plays, produced, it wouldn't matter where I was. It's always about the people. I always end up wandering around and meeting the locals and getting involved and staying in the area for a while. It isn't just about getting the play produced or writing a new play, but, I got involved in all the activities that are part of the community. And in a very free sense, it's a very non-structured kind of, I'm collaborating, but I don't know it. On the other hand, I have specifically applied to artists' communities like the Atlantic Center of the Arts in Florida, which is kind of an artist think tank. You have to apply and get accepted, and then you have the privilege of studying and learning for a very intense period, sometimes 3 weeks. And you're kind of in seclusion with these people on a private campus, and you collaborate, you learn about what they're doing, but you get to do your own work, and you also get to study with someone who's, considered a master artist. And that's very exciting.
Since 2010, Karen's been developing SPARTS, an educational fusion of sports, arts, and school studies with a wellness component. Utilizing the strength of improvisation and a collaborative process, students and teachers facilitate and intensify learning by fusing physical activity, the arts, and curriculum into singular activities while fostering wellness. In 2012, she began experimenting with SPARTS activities as an artist in residence at Liberty Middle School in Liberty, South Carolina. She's learned more about how the arts impact learning process when fused with physical activity and school subjects. Development in Liberty has led to her sharing SPARTS throughout the U.S. Since 2013, Karen's been researching and developing a multimedia dramatic comedy, Gift from the Panhandle, about Nazareth, Texas, a small but thriving panhandle town in the midst of a disappearing way of life. Her work in Nazareth has included research, writing, residence, and a multimedia approach toward gaining an understanding of the core values which guide the community: faith, family, land, and education. She's explored deeper within the community and volunteered for various activities. She's discovered that the arts have played an important role and community survival. Collaborating with educators and students in Liberty has informed her play development process in Nazareth, and that process has helped with the development of SPARTS in Liberty, leading to her coordinating a variety of Liberty Public Arts projects.
It's the first time in my life that I have focused specifically on two small cities. And like a lot of my projects, it was a gradual process. I didn't know it was happening. I've been based just outside Liberty, South Carolina, a small city in upstate South Carolina, for a very long time. But my work has really taken me all over. But more recently, I've spent more time here and gotten to know the city more intimately, what makes it tick and everything. At the same time, I was developing a new play in a small town in the Texas Panhandle about a very small, thriving, small city, even smaller than Liberty. But it was thriving when all around it, throughout Texas, there were towns that were literally dying. As I was developing the play and spending more time in Liberty, I found I was sharing things back and forth between Liberty and this small town. And it started very innocently, because as I spent more time in Liberty, I was learning about their struggles to, like a lot of small cities in America, are changing the dynamics of their infrastructure, trying to improve, and also to kind of reinvent their identity, find out what really makes them tick, because the cultural dynamics have shifted, and somehow it comes together and takes on a life of its own.
Karen's had many interesting theater experiences, and a couple of her unique experiences were documented by Australian journalist and author Ken Anderson in his book The Coincidence File. Anderson's book chronicles international stories about the nature of coincidence, chance, fate, synchronicity, and morphic resonance. He determined that a couple of Karen's theater experiences were beyond common coincidence. For a long time, Karen has had experiences which seem to reach beyond pure coincidence and appear to embrace faith, destiny, and psychic awareness. After her father passed on, she became more poignantly aware of spiritual influences on her work. Her father had known much about theater, and she continued to rely on his input within a nonverbal context. At one point, she felt his influence guide her to an opportunity at a theater which she had been working toward. Several weeks into the run of the musical, she had a strong desire to take her day off to visit her mother. As she walked into the house, joking, Karen said the phone would ring and it would be for her. It was an old theater joke. Within minutes, the phone rang. It was a family friend who took a chance that Karen might be in town and would come to a last-minute party hosting Scottish officials for the USA bicentennial. As a result, Karen was commissioned to write and perform a one-woman play she had been researching on Annie Sullivan, Helen Keller's teacher companion. Karen spent the next few weeks writing, memorizing, and previewing the show before leaving for Scotland immediately following the closing of the musical.
A couple of days before I left to fly to Scotland, I was returning the research materials, mostly books, to the library. And I was thinking I should find some way to tie Annie and Helen in to Scotland. They traveled all over the world. Maybe they went to Scotland. And I picked up a book off the top of the pile and started to put it down on the table. And the book fell open to a page. And my eye, for some reason, was drawn to the bottom of the page. And there in a paragraph, it was telling the story of Annie's last few days. She was dying in a hospital in New York, and Helen was by her side. And Annie always spelled into Helen's hand, letters of the alphabet to make words. And she wrote in her hand, "I would like to go back to Scotland next spring, where my soul has always been at rest." Annie died 2 weeks later. The town where she wanted to go back where the farmhouse was, where they spent some vacation time, was 15 miles from where I was going. It was mind-boggling. I was stunned. I couldn't believe what I was reading. I got chills, and I quickly changed the whole opening of the play to reflect this wish. When I arrived in Scotland, I was told that the farmhouse had been closed up, boarded up, and declared derelict a long time before. And they said, well, you can't go, it's too dangerous. But in my mind, I went, I don't care how I'm going to get there, I'm going to get in. And the next day I get a phone call from someone at the Scottish Highlands Council saying, oh, we just happened to find out that the farmhouse was bought by a couple and they'd been fixing it up, and it had just happened a couple of weeks ago before I arrived. And they heard about me and would I come and visit? And they attached a photographer to take me to the house. The reason they wanted me to visit was because they thought the house was haunted with loving spirits and wanted to hear about Annie and Helen. Well, if that wasn't enough, and like the whole mystery is building and building, and I'm thinking, what next? And I get a call from the mayor's office within 2 days because the story hit the newspapers. And this total stranger called, was a tourist traveling through town, called the mayor's office. How they get in touch with me? They have important information they want to share. And the mayor's office said, oh, you can't go and meet these people. It could be dangerous. And I'm thinking, oh, I'm going, right? So I meet this couple in a public place. Why was she interested? Her mother was the nurse on duty at the New York hospital when Annie died. And her mother had told her stories about Annie and Helen, which I had not read in any book, and they eventually went into my play. I corresponded with the woman when I got back to the States. This is incredible. What are the odds? No coincidences there. Even today, thinking about that tour brings a smile to my face. Even though it was a long time ago. What started out as an interesting and unexpected adventure turned into a mysterious journey. It transformed me and changed the course of my life. We're each on a unique journey. If we allow ourselves to tap into the spiritual and universal experience, unusual and sometimes wondrous events await. I, for one, look forward to more of them, always powered by the light. It seems it's always about the light.